There are neighborhoods where the night feels heavier than the air itself, where every porch light flickers like it's trying to warn someone, where every shadow stretches longer than it should, and where silence carries secrets that no one dares to admit. Mine was one of those neighborhoods. The kind where the HOA strutted around like self-appointed monarchs, where power was a silent currency, and where prejudice moved through the community like a slow, poisonous fog. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Manicured lawns, synchronized holiday decorations, polished mailboxes that gleamed like they were scared to tarnish. But beneath all that sparkle lived a rot. One person in particular who embodied that rot with unsettling dedication. The neighbors called her many names, but the one that stuck was Karen, the type who weaponized rules she didn't write and authority she didn't really have. The kind who smelled difference before she even saw it. And in the dead of night, when the street was quiet and the hum of the world softened, another hum would begin. A low, electrical vibration. A hungry sound. A secret sound. It was the sound of power being siphoned, my power, pulled straight from my outdoor outlet. The cords stretched across my yard like a pair of black veins pumping energy into a vehicle that glowed faintly beneath the moonlight, her sleek, polished Tesla. The same Tesla she flaunted at every HOA meeting as proof of her modern superiority. It started small. A few dollars on the electric bill. A strange spike in usage. A flicker in the house when the system overloaded. But then the flickers grew more violent. Lights pulsed like failing heartbeats. Outlets whispered with static. Appliances stuttered awake at odd hours. My home felt haunted by the greed of someone who refused to acknowledge boundaries, especially those belonging to someone she never considered her equal. Rumors, too, began circulating. The kind that wound through community chat threads and passive-aggressive social posts. Rumors that targeted me the way only racially tinted whispers can, insinuating, twisting, dripping with coded blame. It was never about evidence, it was about narrative. Her narrative. But the night I finally understood the full depth of her arrogance wasn't the night she stole power. It was the night she smirked in passing, confident that nothing would ever happen to her. Confident that the rules she broke would never stick to her. Confident that someone like me would never challenge her. That was the night I stopped seeing her as just a nuisance. The night I realized that the electric humming wasn't just draining my power, it was fueling hers. And the imbalance of power was never accidental. It was a statement. So, quietly, methodically, I decided to shift that balance. Not with confrontation. Not with shouting. But with something far more controlled, precise, and undeniably poetic. I began crafting a plan that would expose her entitlement in a way she couldn't twist or hide from. A plan that would turn her weapon back onto her. She thought she could take from me without consequence. She thought she could drain me dry. But she forgot that electricity doesn't like being stolen. It retaliates. It surges. It burns back. And soon, very soon, her precious Tesla would learn exactly what a surge feels like. Hit subscribe. Watch till the end. The neighborhood had always been a place where appearances mattered more than truth. It was designed to look peaceful from the outside, with its tree-lined streets and identical houses standing like obedient soldiers in perfect rows. But behind those closed doors lived a hierarchy carved from unspoken biases, where those who looked like they belonged moved freely, and those who didn't were watched, measured, judged. I had moved there for quiet, for space, for the simple comfort of owning a home without disturbance. But peace is fragile when people see you not as a neighbor, but as an outsider occupying land they believe you shouldn't. From the first day, the eyes followed me, cold, assessing, calculating. The HOA pretended to operate under rules, but the rules bent in strange ways, always tilting toward the same people, always tightening around the same targets. It didn't take long for the pattern to emerge. Small infractions invented out of thin air. Notices appearing on my door even when my property was spotless. Complaints logged against me for things the entire street did daily. And at the center of it all stood Karen, an unofficial queen of the HOA, armed with a sense of entitlement so strong it practically radiated from her. Her Tesla became a symbol of her dominance, gliding silently through the neighborhood like a mechanical predator. She flaunted its sleek frame as if it elevated her above everyone else. But when the sun dipped behind the rooftops, when the world dimmed into quiet darkness, that car of hers became something else entirely. It became an extension of her greed. Its charging cable slithered across my yard, feeding on my electricity, drinking from my home as though it were hers to claim. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A misunderstanding. Something that could be corrected with a simple confrontation. But then the HOA threats intensified, the glances grew sharper, the gossip turned uglier. Every attempt to defend myself was met with the same icy dismissal, the type rooted not in logic or fairness, but in the quiet prejudice that kept certain people shielded and others exposed. She wasn't just stealing power. She was reminding me of the place she believed I should occupy. A place beneath her, beneath them, beneath the system they upheld. And that was the moment I realized the setup wasn't mine, it was hers. She'd built a stage for humiliation. She just didn't know I was about to rewrite the entire script. The nights grew heavier as the pattern deepened. Every time the streetlights flickered, I knew her car was feeding again. My electric meter spun faster than it ever had, ticking like a countdown. The air inside my home carried a faint warmth from overloaded circuits, a warning that something was pushing the system far beyond what it was built for. While the power theft drained my home, the HOA's accusations kept coming with uncanny precision. Grass length, trash placement, unapproved modifications. Each new note felt like another needle pushed deliberately beneath the skin. It was clear now, Karen wasn't just targeting me through electricity. She was orchestrating a campaign, subtle enough to deny but loud enough to wound. But the moment everything shifted was the night I found footprints across my lawn, hers, pressed deep into the soil like signatures of intrusion. The cable from her Tesla stretched across my property with bold arrogance, glowing faintly under the moonlight. There was nothing accidental anymore. She did it because she believed she could. She did it because she knew the system would cushion her, protect her, validate her. The power surges worsened. My lights would blink awake in the early hours, appliances hiccuping with static. My breaker tripped more frequently, my bill climbed higher, and still, she siphoned without hesitation. I began observing, tracking every spike, every surge, every moment her car drank from my line. And slowly, a plan unfurled, calculated, quiet, built with the same patience she had mistaken for submission. If she wanted to escalate, then I would match her, precisely, intelligently, invisibly. She crossed into my space over and over. Soon, she would learn what it felt like when the power she stole turned against her. The rising tension wasn't just electrical. It was personal. It was racial. And it was reaching its breaking point. The neighborhood slept under a blanket of quiet that felt too perfect, too rehearsed, as if the houses themselves were holding their breath. The air was thick with the metallic scent of an impending storm, even though the sky was dry and cloudless. It was the kind of night when energy didn't just move through wires. It pulsed like a living thing, waiting for release. I had prepared for this moment with the same calm precision she never expected from me. Every reading, every surge, every minute of her nightly theft had given me the data I needed. I knew the exact hour her Tesla drained the hardest. I knew the precise moment her battery demanded its biggest pull. And I knew when my system reached its most fragile threshold. The yard was silent except for the faint hum of the charging cables stretched boldly across my lawn, its surface trembling with current. Her car sat there in the dark like a sleeping beast, smooth, polished, arrogant. The cable pulled at my outlet with greedy insistence, the meter spinning like a wheel pushed beyond control. Then the house flickered, once, twice, like a warning shuddering through its bones. But this time, I didn't step back. I didn't rush to stabilize it. I let the tension build exactly as it needed to. My system surged, strained, peaked. The charge her car demanded collided with the limits of what my line could offer. Two opposing forces wound tighter and tighter, like storm clouds grinding against each other in the sky. And then the surge hit. The flash, sharp, violent, ripped through the cable. The air cracked open. The hum turned into a roar as the power snapped back through the line, racing toward the Tesla's battery with a force it was never meant to handle. The ground vibrated beneath my feet as the current overloaded her system, slamming into the expensive machine that had fed on my home for weeks. Lights across the street flickered in confusion. A sudden plume of smoke curled upward, illuminated by the faint, eerie glow of a vehicle losing its lifeblood. The battery hissed, crackled, and then collapsed into a dark, lifeless silence. Her prized symbol of superiority, fried in an instant by the very power she stole. In that moment, the imbalance shattered. For the first time, the neighborhood wasn't looking at me. All eyes would be on her. Morning broke with an eerie stillness that felt nothing like the usual hum of suburban routines. The sun rose slowly over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the quiet streets, as if the neighborhood itself was hesitant to wake up after what had happened. The remnants of smoke still clung to the air, a faint metallic tang that whispered the truth no one could ignore. Her Tesla sat motionless in her driveway, once a gleaming trophy, now a silent monument to her own arrogance. The neighborhood's gossip machinery stirred before the first cup of coffee was poured. Curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. Eyes lingered longer than they ever had. The same people who once looked past her actions without a flicker of concern now stood in their yards with stiff posture, pretending to inspect plants or retrieve mail. But their attention was fixed in one direction, on the charred remains of the vehicle she used as a symbol of untouchable status. For the first time, she wasn't the one controlling the narrative. The whispers weren't about me. They were about her. Her carelessness. Her recklessness. Her entitlement. The HOA, previously quick to pounce on fabricated accusations against me, moved cautiously now. Their once confident stride had softened into uncertain steps. Their voices lacked the sharpness they proudly wielded. They studied her driveway with uncomfortable confusion, piecing together the story they had tried so hard not to see for weeks. The charging cable, scorched and coiled like a defeated snake, lay across the property lines they claimed to defend so fiercely. This time, the evidence couldn't be twisted. It sat in the open, undeniable, unprotected by bias or assumption. For once, the truth favored me, not because it had changed, but because the consequences had finally become too large to ignore. But the strange part was that I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. The surge had never been about revenge or destruction. It had been about drawing a line where none existed, about reclaiming space, dignity, and peace from someone determined to strip it away piece by piece. The real impact wasn't the fried battery or the ruined car. It was the quiet shift that echoed across the community. The neighbors who once avoided eye contact now held it just a little longer. The people who once whispered accusations in coded tones now spoke in cautious, measured phrases. The HOA, once bold in their selective enforcement, hesitated before sending another notice. Something had cracked open, a truth the neighborhood had long refused to acknowledge. And she felt it too. She moved differently in the days that followed. No more smug glances. No more triumphant strolls. Her steps carried a weight she had never known, a weight built from the realization that the system she relied on to shield her couldn't save her from the consequences of her own actions. The cable never touched my yard again. The power theft stopped. The hostility dimmed, replaced by a strained quiet that held more honesty than the polished politeness the neighborhood once clung to. In that stillness, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time: breathing room. Space that belonged to me. Peace that wasn't conditional. But as the days passed, I couldn't help but reflect on how close everything had come to spiraling into something far worse. The surge, the sabotage, the unspoken war, it all pointed to a deeper truth. The problem had never been about electricity. It had never been about lines, outlets, or chargers. It was about the invisible current that runs through every community built on imbalance. A current of prejudice. A current of entitlement. A current of quiet hostility that sparks the moment someone doesn't fit the mold. Her Tesla burned out because of a surge. But the real fire had existed long before that night, smoldering in the way she saw me, judged me, targeted me without a second thought. The surge only exposed what the neighborhood already knew but refused to confront. And as I stood on my porch in the fading light of another day, Watching the street finally settle into an honest silence, one question lingered. A question that wasn't meant just for her, or for the HOA, or even for me. It was meant for anyone who has ever lived in a place where fairness depends on who you are rather than what you do.